So now that we have the outer diameter done, we're going to work on these recessed areas here. So we notice that they have a 1-inch diameter, and we need to precisely locate them at these points right there. So that's what I laid it out for, is so that I can accurately mark this location, this location, this location, and this location. And then we're going to switch to that special 60-degree cutting tool to cut inside here, and that will leave these angles at the correct 30 degrees. Okay. So that takes us down to step 27, and it maps out those points we need to mark. There's 4 measurements we need to make. So before I switch my cutting tool, I'm going to use this one because it's got a nice sharp point on it. So it's probably a little easier if you back the tailstock away, take your caliper, we'll set it for 0.550. And just hold that up there. And again, I'm just visually lining up the tip of that cutting tool to the end of my caliper there. Definitely want to move your tailstock up carefully though. If you ram it, it's going to shove that barrel back into the chuck. That'll mess up your measurement. And now I'm going to turn it on and transfer that scribe into the metal. And we're going to do the same thing again. Next measurement is 1.925. And by the way, our plans tell us that we have a plus or minus 10 thousandths tolerance on all these dimensions. So that's pretty easy to stay within that tolerance and visually mark things. Here again, being real careful not to push the barrel back into the chuck. And I also didn't quite get my die in the right spot. Next mark is 2.725. Our final mark is 4.1. Okay, so now we have those marks on there. We're ready to switch to that 30-degree cutting tool. Or I'm sorry, 60-degree cutting tool. So we have a center gauge, right? And I use that to help me sharpen that to 60 degrees. So we'll also use this to help us set it into the cutting tool post and be perpendicular with our barrel. So we'll take the left cutting tool out and put 60-degree cutting tool in. And I'm not going to go too crazy tightening it up just yet. Get everything aligned back up. Get our live center back in here. Snug that up. And then I'll take that center gauge. Tricky. So put that in there, get it aligned the best you can, and then tighten things down. Then adjust the height. Check for clearance. Looks like we're good everywhere there. So we want to take the portions in between these lines here and in between these lines here down to 1 inch. So we're at 1.1 right now. So we need to move or cut in and make the diameter inside there 1 inch. So that's a difference of 100 thousandths, 0.1. I believe our instructions tell us to do that in 2 passes also. It wants us to take 60 thousandths off for the first cut, and then whatever's left over to make it a nice, perfect 1 inch. So get your height good. And we're going to use the same RPM, same feed rate. We're still feeding to the left. I'm going to move that cutting tool up. I'm going to be within my scribe lines. I'm going to try to just barely touch it. And then I want to zero my dial. So we put that on 0. So 0 is tip of the cutting tool touching the outer surface. And I'm just going to work that in 60 thousandths. So I'm going to feed it in nice and slow. And it will kind of help if you wiggle the carriage back side to side. That kind of helps the cutting tool because you're gouging that in there. Okay, I've gone in 60 thousandths. I'm going to work it back to the scribe line a little closer by hand. Then I'm going to engage my feed. Stop that before you get to the scribe line. You don't want to wipe that scribe line out just yet. And I'm going to move it back down to my right hand side. And we're going to go in the rests. We're going to go in 40 thousandths. Go ahead and engage the feed to the left. I'm just going to have faith in my work and my dial and assume that I'm cutting that diameter at 1 inch right now. We hope. Should be though. As we get to the hinge here, we're going to be ready to stop it. This time I'm going to finish it off by hand, bring it right up to my scribe line. Back out our cutting tool. I'm going to bring it over to the next step here. Basically the exact same thing we just did. We're going to go in 60. Cut, a little shy of our mark. Go back down again. Again for our final pass. So I'm moving my dial right to 0.1. I'm going to move it over to catch the right hand side of that scribe line. Done with the recess there. With that cutting tool while it's in there, and we want to knock off this sharp edge on the outer end of the barrel. So it tells us in the instructions to use the side of that cutting tool, and we just want to basically move it over 50 thousandths of an inch. So you could die it and put a scribe line on there. I have a dial on my longitudinal hand wheel there, so I can use that. That's what I'm going to do just to save time. So I'm going to move it over to where it just barely touches and then go by my dial. Okay, right there it touches. So I'm just counting the correct number of lines to go to 50 thousandths. And that's it right there. That gives us a nice effect there and gets rid of a sharp edge that could cut or be painful. Okay, so that concludes that part of the barrel. The next thing we'll be doing is flipping it around and doing the detail on the end.